time myself. Hi, hello everyone. It's really nice to be here. Thank you so much to Damia and Gisela for inviting me here today. It's wonderful to be here and to be a part of so many other inspiring speakers and to be exploring this question, a cultural heritage without young people. I think it's been really interesting hearing the conversations this morning and some of the presentations, because I think this question, a cultural heritage without young people, and I think Roger alluded to this idea of kind of connecting youth and future. And I think that is something that is really kind of underpinning all of the work that we are doing. So briefly, I am Rachel Noel. I am Head of Learning Programs and Partnerships, but for the majority of my time at Tate, so since 2014, I have been working with young people and leading the Young People's Programs team. So I'm going to be speaking with my youth hat on today. And we are part of, within Tate, so we work across Tate Britain and Tate Modern. Not many people know, but there's a family of 4 Tate galleries. So we have Tate Britain, Tate Modern in London. We have St. Ives and Liverpool as well. But I work across the 2 in London as part of the learning department. And so there are kind of separate programs and teams for early years and families, for schools and teachers, and for public programs. And so the work that I'm going to share with you today is the work that we are doing as part of the Young People's Programme, specifically young people 15 to 25, coming to us outside of mainstream education. So not coming with their school necessarily. The work that we do is about working with and for young people to co-devise programmes at Tate. So this is an overview of some of the work that we do. I'm going to speak a little bit of the evolution of the work with young people at Tate, as well as some of the programs and case studies of some of the work that we do, and then kind of end up with some of our learnings. So just to give you a very quick snapshot of the work what our work entails, I suppose, which is a youth collective. We have a group of young people, 150 young people, called Tate Collective Producers, who are all 15 to 25. So I'll speak a little bit about them later. We have a young membership scheme, so Tate Collective, which is a free membership scheme, free to join. There's 130,000 young people signed up to that globally. And again, I'll give you a brief snapshot of that. We run large-scale lates in the gallery at Tate Britain. We run artist-led programs, community art commissions, so working outside of the museum in the community and with young artists. We have run a co-working space, so thinking about kind of hangout space and social space within our buildings. We run a careers and mentoring program, which again has come out of a lot of the research that we have done with young people telling us we love being a part of the program here, but there's a big gap to getting to working in the sector, so we have a special creative careers program. We work in partnership with the youth sector, so working specifically with youth sector rather than necessarily kind of schools, thinking about those local youth organisations or whether it's kind of local authority organisations that are specifically working with young people who are underrepresented within the cultural sector. Strategy, which I think just to underpin everything that we're doing here is that this is future-facing work. And the organisational change, for me, has to be kind of really embedded in everything that we're doing with young people to make our organisations more porous to young people. So I'm going to briefly today speak about what does it mean to programme with and for young people, building community through art and learning, and then at the end, hopefully, if there's time, get to some of the challenges that we have faced with this work, as well as some of our reflections. So I wanted to start with a quote by Octavia Butler, who is a science fiction writer, but for me a philosopher. This quote, "The only lasting truth is change," for me is really important because I think the openness to change, I think, is a key principle and foundation for working with young people. So being open to listening to young people, being open to changing the way that we think and the way that we work, being open to the way that we kind of change how we perceive art and artists, who gets to make art, who gets to define it. So I think this is something that I kind of hold throughout the work that I do with young people. And before I get started just on those 3 sections, I wanted to just share 2 projects that I think have kind of been the underpinning, I guess, of a lot of the work that we've done at Tate with young people. So Circuit was a 4-year national programme that connected young people to galleries to spark change. It involved Tate working in partnership with 8 other galleries across the UK. It was created in the wake of the 2011 London riots in response to a young teenager being killed by the police. And so it was a real moment of reckoning for the UK, for our society, for thinking about, well, what, these are publicly funded organisations. Tate holds the collection, the nation's art collection. So what are we doing to really support young people to engage with it and to ask questions, to express themselves, and what can we do for young people in our local communities? So it was a landmark programme. I think what made, I could speak to you for 45 minutes about Circuit, so I definitely recommend to have a look on our website. We did so much research, writing, there were publications, there were reports with a kind of a real range of people from right across the UK in very different environments, whether that's kind of local, rural museums and much smaller organisations without a youth programme who were just getting started, to people like Tate who we'd been kind of going with our young people's programme for about 10 years at this point. So for me, the really unique element of Circuit was that it was, I suppose, a kind of an action research programme. And it wasn't just about doing the work with young people, it was about learning from what we do and embedding that into kind of future programmes. So I think the learning from Circuit has had a significant impact on what we still do today. So I think I just wanted to underpin this work that finished in 2017. And so one of the key learnings, as well as the 2 key learnings, I suppose, coming out of Circuit were, the first was young people telling us unanimously across the UK they wanted more support with careers. So there was a careers programme. And the second, which I think has been mentioned earlier in Gisella's presentation, that it's expensive to go to museums. And so even for those of us that work in the cultural sector, a ticket at Tate at the time would have been £20, £22 sometimes, which even for those of us with jobs is a lot. We have to take a gamble, right? And so we created a youth membership scheme called Tate Collective. So Tate Collective is a free-to-join membership for those under 26, from 16 to 25. Young people can sign up for free online anywhere in the world. They get £5 tickets to exhibitions for themselves and 3 friends. They get discounts in shops, in the cafe. They get creative opportunities. So we do things like open calls where we invite young people to share with us their artwork, and digital content and events, which I'll speak a little bit more about. Currently, we have around 130,000 members, so it's the largest youth arts membership in the world. And for me, I think the really exciting element of Tate Collective is that it's a vehicle for change. We now have a very large group of young people who are connected to us, who are talking to us, who are asking us for things. They're, of equal number to our regular paying members, and so in terms of power within the organisation, they are becoming a very a kind of embedded stakeholder within our decision making. So those were some kind of foundational programs, and I'm going to speak a little bit more now about some of the work that we do and how we do it. So I think the first thing I wanted to touch on was a values-led approach. So with our work with young people, it's really important to think about how we really kind of guide our decision-making, guide our approach, guide our practice, our processes. And so for me, these are values that we speak regularly about with young people. We come back to them when we're making decisions with them and about the programme. So equity, which for me is a kind of more active word than diversity. Equity kind of represents the acknowledgement that we don't all start from the same starting place. So An equitable program is about ensuring that we are paying for young people's travel, ensuring that we've got food for them on the table when they come with us, because they might be coming from school, from work, from different economic situations. So ensuring that we are running an equitable program that ensures that young people can participate equally. Authenticity is incredibly important. We might think we know what young people want, but actually ensuring that we have the conditions in place for young people to lead authentically with their own voice, and it feels real. It's what they want to do, and it's authentic to them and their peers and what's happening in their lives. So authenticity is something that is incredibly important, particularly kind of for the larger museums who have a very, we have our, I suppose our communications practices and our corporate voice, but actually it's really important. We kind of have a lot of conversations internally about ensuring that we have an authentic youth voice within everything that we are doing. Relevance, ensuring that our collection, our artworks, whether you're working within cultural heritage, within art museums, that we are relevant to young people's lives, and ensuring that, I think some of the most exciting works that or programs that we've worked on are sometimes, we have a collection of art that dates back 500 years, and often people think the contemporary work is where the most exciting youth work will happen and where young people are most interested. But actually, having a conversation about portraiture in the 1700s can be incredibly illuminating about what is happening in young people's lives today. Collaboration, I think, goes without saying. Lots of us will say this word a lot today, but really ensuring that there is a collaborative approach, that we are doing programs with and for, and we are not speaking about young people when they're not in the room. Trust is something that I'll come back to today many times, but is really key in ensuring that we are working effectively with young people, that we are building trust between us, and belonging as well, ensuring that young people feel that they have ownership of the space. So giving young people space and ensuring that they have agency to take up the space and feel like it's theirs. This is a long quote, apologies, but it's something that I won't read it out, but essentially is looking at, it's a quote from Celine Condorelli, who is an artist and an architect and runs a project space in Birmingham in the UK. And this was part of a publication of hers that looks at the work of supporting and the work of support structures, and actually how we might not necessarily focus on something that holds something else up. And I think that, for me, is kind of central to the practice of working with young people. It's about seeing your role as a facilitator for their ideas and a kind of a space maker, if you like. So thinking about how we hold and provide support for them within, to have their own voice, rather than creating a structure for them to do that within. So, thinking about kind of co-production in practice, and this is a word I think that we all hear a lot. We hear co-production. I'm thinking, that would be something that I define as working with a group of young people to produce an event. And for me, the really key aspects of the practice in ensuring that we are kind of doing co-production well, or that it works for all parties, are things like ensuring that we've got the conditions in place to enable that co. So what was the invite? Like, do the young people know why they are in the room? What does the space feel like? Do they feel safe? Do they feel able to speak up and ask questions and be critical? Are they being paid to be there, or have they had their travel covered to be there? On that kind of basic level. And for me, there's, it sounds quite deep, but I think there's, for us as museum and cultural heritage professionals, there's always an assessment of power that we need to be making when working with young people. So ensuring that we have a space where young people can feel that ownership. So one of the things that we always do, for example, is ensure a ratio of staff members in the room, and ensure that we've only got one or two or three staff members in the room, so that young people are the majority voice in that room. Mutual benefit is something I'll say a lot again today. So what are they gaining from the experience? Is there, are they learning skills? Are they gaining knowledge? Are they expanding their networks? Again, are they being paid? So we pay young people for their time, and I think it's about ensuring that there is a kind of, it's something that we have often at Tate, as the youth collective have become more popular, we often get calls from people in marketing or in membership or in design saying, we'd love to speak to young people. And young people are savvy, right? They know, they know what's happening here. And so a couple of years ago, they said to us, that's consultancy. So we need to be paid for consultancy. And so they are always paid for consultancy. We don't take over their space, inviting staff members to come and ask them for their ideas. Again, it's about that mutual benefit. Ownership of the space, which I've spoken a little bit about already, and trust and transparency. So that's something that, of course, needs to be built over time. For me, it's the key to true collaboration and ensures that again, that young people can sense tokenism. They can sense when we know we have some funding to do a project with young people and it's going to benefit our organisation because we haven't got many young people coming through the doors. But I think it's about being really transparent about where's the funding coming from, what is the aim for this particular project, and this is what we see you gaining from this experience, and kind of setting that out in the very early beginning, as well as being very clear. As much as we want to bring young people into a space and with agency and ownership, at times as an organisation there are times where we just can't accommodate some of their wishes, and so it's about being really transparent about why this decision has been made, which is equally as useful for their professional development to understand how decisions are made, how budgets are decided. So it's really important that they can see that kind of transparency and understand why certain decisions might be made and others not. So this is an iceberg, and it's just something that I often use. It's a way that I think about our programme, and particularly co-producing with young people. So at the top is very visible, and that is everything that the public sees, that the rest of the organisation sees, and that might be things like our public programme, our membership scheme, our digital content, our social media channels. That's what everybody sees as the work with young people. But underneath that, and I think crucially holding it up and ensuring that it can stay afloat, is that really important deep root of practice, of co-production, of pastoral care, of and so for us, that's kind of running a youth collective, that's recruiting into the youth collective, it's mentoring, it's career support, it's payment. So it's all of the work, setting the conditions and ensuring that young people can participate in order to create a more public offer for young people. So this is just the way I see the programme. Hopefully it makes some sense to people here too. Oh, this is the same slide. Okay, so a little bit about our Tate Collective producers. Here they are. This is our crew. So they are in-house youth collective. There's 150 of them, which is a very big group. There's 90 on payroll, so 90 of them are Tate staff members with passes, and they are regularly paid for their work. And we have about 40 to 50 who are active at any one time. And it's really important to us. A lot of youth programs might be active for kind of 10 months or certain months of the year. But it's really important to us that young people can join anytime between 15 to 21, and they might stay with us until they are 25. So I have seen young people come in as a kind of nervous young person after school and leave, having graduated from uni, and, one of them worked with Kanye West recently, which has just blown my mind. So I'm hoping that they'll all be my boss one day. But yeah, I think it started in 1999 at Tate Modern, so to say that also this is a very kind of long practice, and they really are the core of our programme. So they're recruited annually. It's closed to the public, and that's a decision that we have made in London. So there are Tate Collective producers at Liverpool and St Ives as well. They have a slightly different recruitment process. But in London, it's closed to the public so that we can make sure the group is representative of the demographic of London. And that's something that we monitor very carefully. It's very important that the young people, all young people, and a representative sample of young people have voice and agency to be programming within the museum for their peers. So, what is Tate Collective Producers? What do they do? They are a long-term, well, it provides a long-term learning journey that offers young people the opportunity to demystify the museum practices. So one of the things that we always hear they really love about being part of the scheme is the kind of behind the scenes element, meeting staff members, having tours when the museum is closed, and really kind of, understanding the museum from a different perspective. They develop their own creative practice, so many of them are artists, practitioners in their own right, and will present and share their work as part of our program. They're able to critically engage with art and ideas, so meeting with researchers, meeting with curators to really understand, the ideas and storytelling within our collection. They lead the content of our public-facing program, so they are responsible for developing the creative ideas that engage a much wider audience, from putting together an artist long list, coming up with the idea of the event, which works they want to respond to, right down to kind of, working on marketing and design. They build their experience, skills, networks, and they're involved with decision-making. So I've just been interviewing last week for a replacement role. We have a young person on the panel, and they get paid. So they're all casual staff members, and we ask that they volunteer their time when there is a learning experience. So if they are learning about putting on a program, they volunteer their time. If they are delivering an event or consulting, then they're paid. So they meet monthly, and they're joined by artists, curators, practitioners. Sometimes they meet in project groups, and we also have some lead in office roles. So at any one time, we might have 2 or 3 young people in our team meetings, working in the office on, say, 1 day a week on a particularly large program. We have a mentoring program that we run in partnership with a mentoring charity who train members of Tate staff to deliver mentoring for Tate Collective Producers, which for us is beyond mutual benefit. It does so many things, as well as kind of benefiting the young person. It also means that workers in the museum get to really build a real relationship and understand what is going on in the life of a young person. They consult. And also peer-to-peer learning. We often get a lot of questions around the age group. So we have young people 15 to 25. It's obviously a huge element or a huge kind of part of your life. So I think what happens really naturally and really beautifully is that there is a kind of a peer-to-peer learning where you can join the collective maybe when you're at school or much younger and see young people that are just that bit further ahead than you. So that, I think, particularly for young people who may not have access to anyone working in the arts or have an idea, of where to go, how to forge a kind of a route for themselves, is a really powerful community. I've got 15 minutes left, so I'm going to whiz through some of these case studies. So to give you a kind of outline of probably the largest scale program that we run with Tate Collective Producers is Late at Tate Britain. So Late at Tate is a large scale event. We have around 3,000 to 4,000 young people. The audience is around 18 to 25 years, and that's the first Friday of every month. It's multi-art form, and we understand that many of the biggest draw to this program is the mix that is on offer. So the fact that you can come down on a Friday night and hear music, you can connect with performers, there will be film, digital, discussion. So that really attracts a much wider range of young people. And it's about 20% of the audience is new to Tate and hasn't been to a museum in the past year. So it's a really big draw in terms of welcoming in a new young audience. I'm just going to show some images of this one. So it's curated by Tate Collective producers. We see the space, or we see the program, as a kind of experiential, social learning experience. Again, it's about giving young people ownership of the space. So when they walk in on a Friday night, they can immediately tell that it's a very different environment. They're surrounded by their peers. There are artists, poets, speakers that they have invited from their networks that draw in an audience who would not otherwise be thinking of going to Tate on a Friday night. And the location of Tate Britain, other than this is Tate Britain, so the location of Tate Britain compared to Tate Modern is much further out. It's not somewhere that young people, so it's in near Chelsea. It's in an area where a lot of young people, are not necessarily hanging out. So we don't get that kind of footfall. So really, this program has to work quite hard in terms of being a kind of destination for young people on a Friday night. And I think they, in terms of the work that Tate Collective producers do on the programme, they will research the collection, they'll decide what it is that they want to respond to, so whether there's a collection work or a particular display, they'll develop the programme, they'll reach out to the artists that they want to speak to, and work with Tate teams across marketing, production, design to make it happen. So it really is kind of led and fronted by them. And this is Corey, who is a filmmaker and kind of, showcased some of his films alongside some of his peers in response to some of the thematics. So there's often a kind of sharing of their practice and their knowledge too. So I'll briefly whiz through, just so we can get to the challenges and the tips at the end. But something that I briefly wanted to speak to was this idea of building community through art and learning, which I think is something that I have noticed over the past kind of few years, I think probably the last 3 or 4 years, that really what the programme is doing and is affording is building this community of young people, and we see it within Tate Collective producers. I remember one of our Tate Collective producers telling us that he felt like he was on an island because he was interested in photography and he didn't know anybody else interested in art or what to do with this. And he found, he did a partnership project, was part of a youth program, ended up joining the producers, and he's now kind of graduated from university, has his own business, setting up his own collective. And so I think one of the things, and this bell hooks quote for me, the joy in this practice is about the function of art is to do more than tell it like it is. It is to imagine what is possible. And I think that is most exciting when we are doing that together. And so it's something that we see within our Tate Collective producers group, but also within the much wider 130,000 young people signed up to Tate Collective, is that they want to be part of a community. They want to see, hear from, connect with each other. And I think that's a kind of really powerful element to this work. So thinking about what happens with an artwork and what we're able to kind of, I suppose kind of what an artwork is able to afford us, both individually and collectively. I guess I just wanted to acknowledge kind of what happens, what do we mean by creative learning, and what happens when we are with art. So that idea that new ideas and perspectives, we can feel seen, we can reflect in different ways. It might be escapism, it might be that sense of well-being, it might be inspiration. We often speak about this third space that is not, it's not school, it's not home, but it's this other space where we can kind of connect with others and using art or cultural heritage to have conversations that we're not having at home or at school. So thinking about how we kind of use art and cultural heritage to think about how we can connect in other ways in a society that is kind of, again, to Roger's point earlier, kind of separating us in so many other ways. And so this was a programme that we did in exchange with a gallery in Rotterdam called Tent. It was a programme called Where Does Culture Happen? We had artists and young people from both cities exploring this question, where does culture happen? So we spent time in each city with artists who were kind of talking to us, showing us around their city, and we located young people as creative researchers. So the answer to this question that was explored through this program was that culture happens everywhere, and I guess it was thinking about how are these cultural organisations connected to their local communities. So we were speaking about culture happening on the street, culture happening in the home, culture happening in corner shops, and the processes of inclusion and exclusion that mean that young people might decide actually to go to that gig or to go round to their friend's house or to connect with others and create their own culture rather than going to our museums. So we kind of were exploring this idea that we were kind of this idea of kind of high and low culture. So thinking about the culture that is represented within our museums versus kind of what the cultural spaces that young people were connected to outside. And for me, I think there was a really interesting process of kind of connecting to communities outside of the museum, but then bringing that back into and inside the museum to reimagine the museum space. So they worked with a group, a collective called Resolve Collective, who are an interdisciplinary design studio, to reimagine the space and reimagine what Tate Modern would look like, for example, using these kind of signifiers of low culture. And so thinking about how we support young people to, again, kind of explore these research questions through the collection. And this was entirely led by them and the artists that they selected in both cities. I'm going to whiz through this one just to get to the challenges and reflections. So in terms of challenges, because this work is not straightforward and easy, I think the biggest thing that we come up against is the perception of arts and cultural spaces. Who are they for? Who are they speaking to? Who is the dominant group in that space? And so that is something that we often see, and that happens before young people have even set foot in our buildings and our spaces. Building real trust with young people. Again, that's all about transparency and thinking about how do we really ensure that young people trust what we are doing? How do we kind of have a really open, generous relationship with them, but also remain accountable to decisions that we're making? Supporting young people from underrepresented backgrounds to see themselves reflected. So for us, our workforce, our collection, our spaces are predominantly white, middle class, able-bodied, cisgender, for example. And so ensuring that we are kind of welcoming in a group, how do we support them to see themselves within the work that we are doing? Institutional priorities, pressures and restrictions. So again, it's back to that mutual benefit. There are institutional needs, whether it's kind of funding, whether it's strategies, whether it's decisions that are made outside of a young people's program that affect young people and the work that we do. So I was just talking this morning about some, again, the kind of decisions that might be made that make young people question, why would we be here? This does not represent me or my politics or my culture, for example. And so again, it's back to kind of being really open and transparent about what we have within our power to shift. Ensuring an ongoing visible offer for young people outside of programming. That's something that is really driving our work at the moment, and we fought for a long time to have something like Tate Collective, which is, it's a global scheme. It's offering discounted tickets, which is fantastic, but I think we're still pushing that again to think what is happening. It's great to have 3,000-4,000 young people within the gallery on a Friday night, but what's happening on a Tuesday morning? What is here and there for them to engage with when it's not a large-scale event? And the impact of the pandemic, we've really seen a drop-off in young audiences. So we have around 67% of audiences who are returning back to Tate, but represent in proportionately less young people. And so we are seeing a kind of drop-off in young people within our wider audiences. So that's a kind of urgent challenge that we're currently looking at. And finally, some of the learnings. So these are some of the learnings, I think, that kind of sum up, well, a lot of these were taken, again, from the circuit research that we have done. So speaking kind of to organisations that might be at very different spaces with their young people's programming. But the first is to consider your organisation's motivations for working with young people. Why is it that you want to work with young people? What specifically do you have that is of relevance? What skills, resources, opportunities do you have for young people to be involved in your work? Create space to let young people lead and pay them for their time. Again, I think it's paramount, and we get, of our 150, we have some young people who will just turn up to do the paid work, and that's okay. They're still gaining experience from us, and I think, it's really important that we recognise young people's time. Listen and be transparent, and be prepared to adapt and change. I think listening is kind of the key, is the key word there. So again, just ensuring that we are really listening and ensuring that we are hearing young people and able to act on what they are telling us. They are, after all, the future. Connecting the programme to a wider cultural ecology, and for us in visual arts, that means thinking about kind of more broadly than visual arts. It means about connecting to music, performing arts, poetry, a much wider sense of the creative ecology that young people are already connected to. And then to think carefully about the conditions that enable agency and ownership. What has the invite to young people been? Who are you working in partnership with? What do they understand their role to be? How comfortable do they feel working with your organisation or on your programme, and what are you able to do to ensure that they can lead those spaces? And work in partnership to reach new audiences, so whether that's working with local youth organisations, local authority, but ensuring that we are working in partnership with those who we would not otherwise be connected to reach new young audiences. And I think that's everything. Thank you.